Well, g'day everyone, how's it going? Coming at you from the studio today, and in this video I want to do my 5 tips and tricks for the Canon R5. Now, I've had the camera for a couple of months and I've been loving using it. It has been a while since I've done a YouTube video. If you don't know me or you haven't followed me or subscribed yet, my name is Michael and I'm a producer, director of photography. I run my own video production company and I've just put out stuff on this YouTube channel for the best part of the last 2 years on stuff that I use and tips and things that I've learned on my journey. I was 10 years in engineering before I transitioned across to video production, and it's been an amazing journey, and a lot of what I learned and the things that I implemented in my business were from YouTube and from the community that I found on YouTube. So I wanted to use this channel as a way to give back. But anyway, that's enough about me. Let's get straight into this video. So the first tip that I want to give you on the Canon R5 is to stop worrying about the overheating. Oh my goodness, this has been blown out of proportion so massively. What no one really has told you in all these videos is you should be using the crop 4K for any long form interviews, not the full frame line skipped, right, which is the low quality 4K, but the crop 4K. It's a 5.1K downsampled to 4K, and it will allow you to continuously record. Now, right now I'm recording this on the Canon R, and I love the Canon EOS R. It's now my B cam to the R5, and I've not really ever had a problem with the cropped 4K. And that might sound ridiculous, but I use a couple of different lenses for different interview scenarios. I use a 24mm and a 50mm. And so in any of those scenarios, I can flip-flop between those two lenses, get a really good cropped image from the R5, and it really has never been a problem. So to save myself the headache of worrying about the overheating in an interview situation, I've just realized that the 5.1K downsampled to 4K crop on the R5 is beautiful. It's not the 4K fine. No, it's not 8K, but it's better than the EOS R. So I'm getting a beautiful image that once I render it down and put it onto YouTube, honestly, no one is gonna know, ooh, was that shot in 8K or did you use the crop 4K on the R5? No one's going to care, and I'm not even going to care. I'm just going to know that on a shoot, if the talent's going to be going for a long period of time and I need to keep recording and keep going on and on and on, the camera is just going to keep recording. It's going to keep putting that to the card, and it's not going to overheat. So I don't ever have to worry about overheating in an interview scenario. And that was my biggest thing, was whether this thing was going to overheat when I was in an interview scenario or not. And for me to have the peace of mind of knowing this is never going to overheat an interview, it's brilliant. It's the best. Yes, you'll have to change your lens up a little bit, but see, on a 24-70, I can just stick it at 24, 24, 2.8, and I could just reframe put the camera further back and get what I want to get. Even still, if I want to be super close to the subject, I can chuck on something like a Laowa 11mm0D, and I can get the image I want, and the crop isn't going to be a factor. Anyway, I've labored that point too much. Okay, the next tip that I have for you is to remap this button here, the MFN button, to switch between video and photo. What I not liked about the EOS R since its inception, and also now the R5, is the cumbersome way that you have to get between photo and video. Now, there is a way to set up a control mode for video. When you're in photo, you just hit video and it shoots in the C3 mode. Let me just check that it actually does that. So you're in photo and you hit record and it records in C3. Yeah, just as would happen with the EOS R. So you can set up your C3 control for when you're shooting photos. But what about if you want to jump back between, say, a C1 or a C2 or C3, or you want to jump back between? Well, what you can do is, say, for example, we jump into the, let me just go into manual mode here. Now, I've mapped this MF button. When I click it, it's one click and it jumps me into photo. One click, and now I'm back in video. Now, if I go to, say, the the mode. Let's go to C3 mode here, or let's say C1. So now I'm going to be in C1 and I hit the MF button. I'm going to jump into M. Hit the MF button and I'm back in C1. So this is a way that if I'm shooting video specifically and I want to pop off some photos, this is the way that I set it up. I have it as no matter if I'm in C1, C2 or C3, as soon as I hit the MF button, it's going to drop me back into the manual photography mode. So that's how I've mapped that button. It's a game changer. So no more mucking around with having to go through, mode, info, manual. So 4 or 5 clicks, I avoid all of that. So my third point is set up your C1, C2, and C3 as different shooting modes. So rather than having to come into manual every time and reset for every single shoot that I do, I've got my C1 set up to be 25 frames per second shooting with a 50 shutter and all the settings that go along with that. Then that's in 4K fine. Then my C2 I've got set up as like a 50 or 60 frames per second slow motion. Then the C3 I have set up as a crop 4K, or I could have the C3 set up as a 120 high frame rate. One of the things I noticed with the EOS R5 is the menu system to choose what settings you're shooting in is a little bit more cumbersome than, say, the EOS R used to be or the 5D Mark IV was. So you actually have to have a few different caveats. Like if you want 4K fine, you have to go in and turn on HQ mode. When you jump in and out of C-Log, you've got to go and turn that on and off, and you have to pick and select what C-Log you want. So the way that I work around that is I use the C modes, and it's just awesome that I can quickly switch between my high frame rate or my 60p slow-mo and my 24p. And when I'm on the fly and run and gun, it works really, really well. So I would set up those for yourself as well. Number 4 is I would remove the ability to record with the shutter button. Now, the reason I do this is because I came from 5D Mark IV where half shutter press was what I used to come out of the menu system. So say if I'm in menu, then I want to come out of the menu system and back to my image, I just press half shutter and it gets me there, it gets me out of there. Now, what was happening was when I was in video mode and I would press the half shutter, sometimes I would do a full press and I would start recording. So that's really bad because sometimes I would get caught in this mode of I'd be thinking I was recording because, as we know on the R5, it's got this red button here that looks like a recording button. So what would happen is I would hit the half press, I would then be recording and I wouldn't know. And then I would then hit my record button and I would think I'm recording, but actually I've turned it off and I'm not recording. So I don't know if you've ever got caught between doing that before. And if you do that at a wedding or in a sort of scenario when you're getting B-roll of something, some action that's not going to happen again, you actually stuff the shot and you miss that critical shot. So it was something that I needed to eradicate from the usability of this camera from day one. So now it's not as much of a problem because I'm used to the half press and I'm not going to, get caught too often in that mode, but I just removed it anyway from there. So the way that you do that is you go into menu, camera menu, the red menu, go along to the 7th item, 7th menu, and down to shutter button function for movies. Click on that and you want to just change half press to meter plus servo AF and not meter plus one shot. I go meter plus servo AF, and then the fully press I put as no function. And so that way I'm never going to get a false press. I can come across and use the normal record on top here for all my recording. And also I also remap a rear button for record as well, because sometimes when depending on how I'm shooting with the camera, sometimes it's awkward for me to hit this record button, same as on the EOS R. So I remap a button at the back in order to allow me to do that. So that is my last point, is that I remap the AF on button. I remap that to another record button. And what it is it's right there to record and turn on and off, as you can see there. And the reason I do that is because sometimes it's awkward to kind of put my finger over the top to this record, and sometimes, feeling around for that doesn't really work. And I want to have my ability to have my fingers here and here to change out different settings. And this one here just makes sense to be close to the AF on. And I don't really use AF on either in photography or video. I know many photographers would use it and it wouldn't work for you, but for me, it works really well to have that there. So that's one of the things that I do, and it just makes hitting record and stopping record just simpler when I'm holding the camera. In this sort of situation, I don't have to continue to move this finger, which is a little bit awkward, I find. So that was my top 5 tips and tricks for the Canon R5, and hopefully you got something out of that. If you haven't subscribed already, make sure you do and hit that like button and comment below. Like, have you got the R5? How are you finding it? Are you thinking about upgrading from an EOS R or a 5D Mark IV? If you are, let me know in the comments. Love to hear from you. And remember, never stop creating. Bye for now.